artists. Today we're going to learn how to glaze. And glazing looks like painting, but it's a little different because when you glaze a work or clay sculpture, you are putting something that is colored onto your clay, but it's not going to look very bright. So, yes, you are painting it, but the difference is when you're all done painting your colors onto your clay, after our 4 class days of painting, then I will load your clay back into the kiln. And these special paints that we call glazes are going to get really, really, really hot. And these special paints are actually going to melt and transform into glass. So here's an example of a sculpture I made that has gone through the kiln. It's shiny. You could see through a lot of the colors because it is transparent glass, even though it's colored with glass. And it's very, very different. It's not this dull, chalky color that you put on first. It's going to be transparent. It's going to be see-through. It's going to be shiny. And it's actually going to be very smooth. So that's the process called glazing. So when you glaze, I have a requirement. I want you to pick at least 5 or more colors. So don't just say, hey, I'm going to paint my clay brown and be done. No, you got to have five, or more different glaze colors. So for example, if I'm doing a panda bear, I'm going to choose white. I'm going to choose black. I'm going to choose some green for my base, but I still need 2 more colors. So inside of some of these different patterns I have, maybe I'll choose like a red. Maybe for the eyes, I'll choose a different color. So you need at least 5 different colors. You're not allowed to simply take one color and color the whole thing or do just 2 colors. Really want you to take your time, and we are going to be glazing for 4 class periods. So I want you to take your time, choose lots of colors, and go careful. Now, speaking of colors, there are different colors on the shelf. And when you get your color, I'm going to ask you to just get one color at a time. And you have to read and trust the color label. All of the glazes has labels on them. So this says bright white. You'll have to trust it. I try to write it on the top as well. Okay, black, coal black. Okay, black glaze. And most of them are pretty obvious. They kind of look similar. But once in a while, you get a glaze that looks like this. Kind of looks like a light purple. But please be careful. Check the label. This is actually going to turn dark blue. Yeah, it looks pink now or violet now, but after it goes in the kiln, it's going to turn into a blue that looks actually very similar to my water cup. So please, please, please make sure that when you're choosing your glaze colors, that you read the labels, trust the labels. Don't go by the color they are now. Go by the color that it says it will turn after exposed to heat. Now you do have to shake it. So whenever you're carrying the glaze, never carry it by the lid because the lids are not always on. Oh no. So always make sure the lids are on. Also, just carry it underneath just in case the lid isn't. And you do have to shake the glaze a little bit. So when you shake it, because the lids are not always on, you hold the lid on. And I often go over to the sink to shake. And anytime you shake anything, whether it's salad dressing or glaze in art class, always make sure the lid is on and keep 2 fingers on the lid. You kind of have this claw hand effect going on. So you shake, 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 keep your fingers on the lid, shake it well, and hold it. Now, here's kind of the tricky thing. When you are ready to glaze, you have to do not 1, not 2, but 3 even coats of glaze. And you'll notice, I'll have this up on the board for you, but it also says your glazes have to dry in between colors. So you have to do your 3 coats of glaze. So I'm going to start today just with my black glaze. So I only have 1 container at a time. I'm going to put my fingers on the lid, shake, 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 make sure the lid's on, very carefully open it. And I often will use the glaze that's in the lid. If you look in here, there's a lot of glaze inside. I don't like to necessarily dip in because then it gets all over the handle of my brush. If you do want to dip, you have to be aware. And speaking of brushes, when you get your brush, get a small brush. Don't get a really big brush. You want to get a small detailed brush that you can work with. When you hold your brush, you often hold it right where the metal meets the wood. Hold it comfortably. If there's glaze all over your brush, wash it off. You want to be comfortable. You want to make sure you have a good working environment. So I'm going to hold it very gently. I actually dip in the lid. Dip, dip, dip. You don't want gobs of glaze on there, so maybe you wipe off on the edge a little bit, twist it. Be really conscientious of your craftsmanship. So once you get the glaze on your brush, then you can very carefully turn your clay. Don't ever drop it, but if you want to pick it up and work, you can. And you do have to turn it since you're working with a sculpture. I often brace my hand against the table or my other hand, and you very, very gently and carefully paint. We're painting on the glazes. So I'm doing a panda. Do the other arm. And see how I'm dipping? Got to go back at the glaze because it'll absorb much faster than paint. And I'm turning it, making sure I have no white spots. I got to do all underneath here. So you really want to do a good, careful job. Go slow. And this is just my first coat. Now I can't go back and say, oh, okay, second coat done. Nope, because that'll actually take the first coat off. You have to wait for your first coat to dry before you go back and do more. So you take your time, really make sure you're getting all the cracks. You might have to go really close and look. And you do a really, really good job. No white spots. Now sometimes I accidentally, get clay where I do, or get glaze where I don't want it to go. If that happens, you'll have a water container. By the way, I also have my water container, my paper towel with my name on it. So if I have drips, they're all right here. And I don't fill up my water container all the way, just halfway. But you can take your brush, rinse it off, get all the glaze off, dry it off on your paper towel, and you can use your wet brush like an eraser to kind of erase any glaze off that you get. You might have to dip it in the water again, but then you could just remove glaze from spots where you don't want it to go. So I got my brush, I got my water container half full, I got my clay, I got my paper towel, and I have my glaze. There we go. I'm cleaning it off. Nice. Now, 3 even coats. And I wonder if you're doing your math now. So you need 3 coats of every single glaze color. So that's just coat 1 of my black. While I'm waiting for my black coat to dry, I can put the lid on, make sure it's on really good for the next person. And I can go put back my black glaze for somebody else to use. And then I can go get my other color. So I'm doing a panda. So I need white. Yep, that's right. You need to use a white glaze on your white spots. Don't just leave the white clay showing. You have to use a white glaze for any place that you want to be white. Why? Because the white glaze will transform into shiny glass. So if you don't use the white glaze, any places on your clay will be kind of dry. It won't be shiny. You won't love the look. So you have to use your 3 coats of white as well. But notice I can only use 1 glaze container at a time. Please don't take more than 1 because we don't have enough for everybody to take their 5 colors at a time. So even though it's challenging because I know you're using 5 colors, you take 1 at a time and put it back where the labels say to get your clay and glaze. So on the cart, when you go up, it'll say reds, oranges, pinks. Put it back where you found it. So remember, make sure the lid's on really good. 2 fingers, shake, 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 shake. You can use the lid, dip in, and very gently paint it on. Do a good job. Make sure you have good craftsmanship. You can turn your clay as you go and do a really good, careful job. Now I'm really going to be extra careful with my white because it's hard for me to tell where it is. So do the best you can. When it's wet, you can see where it is, but just pay attention because I want to make sure there's no spots of just dry clay showing. I want to get every single spot on my clay covered with glaze. And that's super important, especially for the first coat. So you want to really be careful, really make sure you're turning it, really make sure you're looking and doing a good job. Look for those white spots. You want to cover up all of the raw, not shiny clay with glaze. Okay? So there's my first coat of my white that I'm doing. Now, we are going to glaze the bases. So I'll fast forward a little bit. I'm going to switch colors. So anytime I switch colors, I put the lid on, make sure it's on, put my glaze color back on the cart, go get my fresh new glaze color, boop, and please make sure you rinse your brush out in between. We cannot mix glaze colors. You have to use the color that's in the container, and it's really important to make sure that you have gotten all of the glaze off your brush. Shake it up, open my next one, and we are going to glaze the base. So I'll show you real quick. You can glaze right on top of your name. It's okay. You'll see it later. So it's okay to cover up your name. You can glaze the whole entire base. And I do want you to glaze the sides of the base. So we are going to do the sides. Can you see? I know it's a little hard to tell here, but I'm putting my blue glaze. Yep, it's going to turn blue, believe it or not, on the side of my base. So I'm doing the top of my base right on top of my pasta names. I'm doing the side. See how I'm turning it and getting in all those cracks? No white showing. I'm being really careful, getting it in all those cracks, even under the foot there. Now it's kind of hard to see, but I'm getting in all those spaces under there. Doing the side of the base, side of the base. But we aren't going to glaze the bottom of the base. So please don't put any glaze on the bottom. If you do, it's not a big deal. We'll wipe it off. But you're going to, yes, do the side, but no, not the bottom. Okay? Because when the glaze turns into glass in the kiln, it's actually really sticky. So we don't want it to stick to the bottom of the kiln. So we're going to do the side of the base, but not the very bottom of the base. Okay? So remember, wash your brush between colors. You got to very carefully make sure the lid is always, always, always on. Keep the colors on the cart where you found them. And when it's cleanup time, believe it or not, I use my same paper towel. I save this, pick it up 2 hands, 1 hand over the clay, 1 hand on the bottom through the paper towel, and very carefully take 1 separate trip to bring your clay over to the shelf or the countertop where you're storing it, and then come back, rinse your brush off, dump your water out, put that back where you got it. Make sure you put the glazes back. If your glaze container got kind of yucky on the side like mine, and make sure the lid's on, and you could just wipe it off with a sponge quick. Have fun. Can't wait to see your shiny glass clay.